We're here today to talk about the 2017 Tax Act, Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and there's really a lot here for everyone. Individuals, corporations, very, very significant depreciation changes actually in effect for after assets acquired after 9/27/17. And last but not least is the qualified business income deduction, which is something that's a relatively brand new concept, which we'll talk about in depth. Just to contrast, this law was signed into effect December 22nd this past year. And it's interesting to note that back in 1986, when the 86 Act was passed, that took approximately 2 years to get through all the legislation, all the hearings. This one took approximately 7 weeks. I think the reason to point that out is when something is done that fast, there's bound to be some omissions, which there clearly are. Some acts that were changed, are supposed to be changed, were omitted from the act. A couple of other areas were very, very complex, and I think there's going to be a lot of regulations coming out in the next 12 to 18 months. The one area we're going to talk about in depth already has 2 notices that were issued in 2018, so they came out really quickly. So there's a lot to learn, and hopefully that will enlighten you a little bit. A couple of things to keep in mind also is that the individual changes and the pass-through provisions, those are all set to expire after 2025. So a lot of the tax cuts the individuals are going to get will expire at that point in time. The corporate provisions are permanent. Now, if somebody can tell me the definition of permanent, we'll all know it, because I don't think that act is going to be permanent necessarily for the corporate provisions. Time will tell. When the 86 Act was issued, they put a lot of provisions in to lower the taxes, which they did for a number of years, but gradually they kind of worked it out that they took away some of the deductions, or they lengthened the depreciation lives of certain assets. So I expect we're going to see some of that as well in this particular act.